Yeah.
Welcome to Movie Boners.
Welcome to Movie Boners, everybody. I have not a beer this time. Spoiler alert. Normally we open beers. I don't have a beer, but I had to get it just based on the name, and you will appreciate this. So it's a Schilling Hard Cider. It is made with heirloom cider apples. It has a giraffe in a astronaut helmet. It's called Excelsior.
Okay. I was waiting for when I was going to appreciate that drink.
It's a freaking imperial apple cider. It's 8.5%.
Good Lord.
And spoiler alert, I already had one. So
so you're really gonna feel like Stan Lee's cameo in the second Avengers movie.
Exactly. Excelsior.
Well, I am drinking it's called All Day IPA.
All day, baby.
I had to go with the all day because that's like Cap's catchphrase through the whole saga.
I could do this all day.
It is what is that, session ale? Is that how you say it? Yeah.
What? Saison ale?
Saison? No. It's not Saison.
That is the word session. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
All right.
So.
Cool. Is it good?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's good.
This, it tastes like, yeah, this is the kind of beer you drink on a nice sunny day.
Oh, nice.
That's a good beer. That's a
mine.
Good one.
Is it's been a long time since I've had a cider. I've forgotten how like sweet they are, and now I'm like a bitter old man, and it's not too much my thing, but
she doesn't know she was just recorded.
Haha.
That's gonna be on YouTube.
On the internet forever.
Forever.
Tell your friends.
Yeah, no, don't tell your friends.
No. You're gonna get called to the principal's office.
Go watch the movie.
So thank you, Wandering Lions Studios.
Yep, thank you, Wandering Lions.
What? Oh,
sorry,
you
continue.
asshole. So, Wandering Lions Studios, they are a sponsor of our episode, and they sponsor our beer segment. Check them out, wanderinglionsstudios.biz, at Wandering Lions Studios on Facebook and Instagram. Their Instagram has been, they do trivia, as we've talked about. I commented first, and I was like, there is no way Dustin's going to know what this is. And then you freaking guessed it.
Yeah, I did.
I like looked it up because I was like, I'm not going to guess. I just need to know. And I thought the only thing about the clue, they didn't give like a year, but I was like, when they talked about there being like a tank, I was like, okay, so it's probably like open water or something like that. And
that was the start of my deduction as well, by the way.
Okay. So not crazy. That's good.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, so listeners, go to Wandering Lion Studios. You need to dethrone Dustin because he's getting a little proud, a little too big for his britches, and he just tends to guess everything correctly, and it's getting annoying because he knows everything about every movie ever made.
It was a tough one, but I genuinely remember reading that tidbit.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I got to start putting this together. And the filmed with a tank and all the green screen and all that. And I specifically remember the director being like, we don't want it to have the same stylized look as other movies kind of like this. And I was like,
yeah,
all right. This comes out right before they give the answer away, so I guess I won't answer it again. But through the powers of deduction, and there was another clue that they had given, that kind of also piqued why I thought it was going to be the movie that I guessed. And yeah, when I got the Wandering Lions likes your comment, I was like, oh yeah, I hope Jake is just like shaking his head in shame for...
I was shaking my fists at the sky is what I was doing. I was like, Dustin!
Man, I was happy about that.
Yeah, you really pulled that one out. It was very impressive. So yeah, go check them out. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
To guess their things, and they have interesting things in their Movie Madness Mondays as well when they release what the Trivia Thursday was, and then also you get to like vote between two movies usually. So that's good. Yeah. So, are you ready for this episode? The next two episodes.
Yeah, next two episodes. This was one of those funny moments for me where I wanted to start writing all of my notes down, and then I was like, it's the MCU. I have watched the MCU numerous times, which is insane, I know, but everyone was locked inside last year, so I had time.
True. Yeah, for me, it had been quite a while since I've gone back to those early movies.
Yeah?
It had been years, probably.
I'm just going to come out right off the bat. Although I'm a giant, massive DC fan, Zack Snyder worshiper, the MCU, in my opinion, might be the greatest franchise we have had ever.
It's certainly the biggest. And
certainly the biggest.
It's interesting. I don't know. It seems so, certainly not without its flaws, but it seems so perfectly orchestrated over such a long time, over so many movies.
Yeah,
that it's kind of insane. I don't know that will ever happen again. It kind of seems like you kind of got lucky.
It does feel like this is, to me, it feels this is the only time we're going to get this kind of franchise or this kind of enormous saga, especially one that...
As huge and successful it is, I'm sure people will try.
Yeah, but I don't know that we'll have that kind of cultural impact again. And we can get into the cultural impact next week's episode when we get into like the final two of the MCU. But although I don't like all of the movies, I like most of them. And even the ones I don't care for, well... They don't take anything from the whole story, which is nice. Unlike you and I have talked about with Star Wars, you get one or two bad installments, or as you and I kind of deduced, where it was like you had one original film and you fucked it all up.
Yeah, You get a majority bad product, and you're like, I guess I'm not a fan of this anymore. Right. This thing I thought I loved.
Where the MCU comes around, and it's like, oh, I didn't care for that installment as much as I did the others.
Yeah.
But I'm still investing money. I'm still investing all the time. I'm going to buy all the crap. I'm going to, it's a pretty, for me, being comic book fan and all that and loving superheroes, I mean, the MCU, I just, utmost respect for it. Not all of the movies, because there's a couple that I really don't care for at all. And they might be kind of controversial, but we'll get into those.
That's exciting.
Later.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty positive you already know one of them. So
probably. I think that we're going to agree on at least one that I feel like we probably don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I have always been a comic book fan, obviously. Like you, huge DC fan.
Yep.
And I think I was more critical of the MCU, especially early on as they were like coming out and they're trying to put this stuff together. Going back and rewatching it, there are movies that I was critical of that I'm less critical of now. I'm like, no, this is actually, a solid movie. And that's definitely the thing I'll say about the Marvel universe, is that they devised a system kind of like you had like Henry Ford with the automobiles, you had McDonald's with restaurants, and then you have Disney with superhero movies. They created this system that was a surefire, can't fail. Not everything's going to be amazing because you have to take risks in order to be truly great. Some of the movies are a lot of them are at worst fine.
Yeah.
But at best pretty good, really good. But you're not going to have any truly great movies. But that was kind of that's kind of their system, is make solid good movies that everybody will see and most people will like, and that's all we need to do.
Yeah, and the MCU, I mean, what I constantly just kind of fall back to is Iron Man comes out in 2008. Disney did not want Robert Downey Jr. cast. They were very unsure of the film itself. There was a lot of like, why are we putting so much money into this? It's probably going to flop. And then, I mean, it's not my personal favorite of the whole thing, but it's like, it might be my second favorite of the whole MCU.
Yeah, the very first movie, Iron Man, is one of the best.
That first Iron Man is just something genuinely special. Like, it is. Rewatching it this last week, I realized every time I rewatch that first Iron Man, I am constantly like, man, not only is this one of Marvel's best films, but it is one of the most enjoyable superhero movies ever. Like, it is just so cool, and it's so enjoyable, and it's everything you want in a superhero film. It's so good.
I think you said Disney, but the first couple of movies were Marvel Studios.
Right.
Disney didn't buy Marvel until 2009, and that first Iron Man is kind of a crazy story. That Marvel gambled, and they basically leveraged all of their IP to fund it. And if that movie didn't pay off, they would have like lost the rights to make movies for any of their characters, basically.
Right.
And so and they kind of played fast and loose, as I've heard, that the script wasn't totally done. They were just they started filming, and so a lot of the lines were kind of ad-libbed, and a lot of the actors were not used to really working that way.
The one that was most vocal about that was Jeff Bridges, where he's always been very used to having a completed script, lots of rehearsal time, and with that first Iron Man, it was on the fly. Hey, here's a couple new pages. Here's where everyone knew the basic direction it was going. But yeah, it's everything about that first Iron Man would make your average viewer kind of feel like it's going to flop. There's no reason this movie should work. A lot of people didn't even know who Iron Man was, even though he's one of the biggest ones.
Starting with Iron Man is an interesting choice in and of itself. Where it's not like starting with the DCEU, which we're probably going to compare and contrast them. Starting with the DCEU, you start with Superman. Everybody in the freaking planet knows who Superman is.
And then on top of it, then we get what became... I mean, now it doesn't even matter if it's a Marvel film, any kind of like action movie. Thanks to the Marvel films, everyone is like, is there a post-credit scene? And the first Iron Man, the movie itself, giant gamble. And then just for shits and giggles, they throw in Sam Jackson in a cameo as Nick Fury at the very end of the credits being like, I wanted to talk to you about the Avengers. End of film. It was like, okay, teaser, or maybe they had the whole, but as you like learn, they did not have the whole universe plotted out for a little while. because they were still trying to figure out if audiences were going to continue buying into such an undertaking. You know, I mean, setting up 22 movies.
Yeah.
Is
there's
nuts.
Most studios seem to like to do the tried and true thing.
Yep.
If this is what we do, we release these movies at these times and people see them. They're not going to gamble on, okay, we're going to put out 22 movies over like 10 years and maybe less and expect everybody to see them, more people than have ever seen movies to see them, and it's going to pay off. Like that, nobody would think that because it's never been done.
Right. Well, and it's so crazy. I have watched every Marvel film in the theater, and honestly, that is how everyone should see the Marvel films for the first time, is on the big screen. Obviously, they're all out now, so you're not going to. At least up until Phase 4, or whatever it is, starts really kicking off, which is coming up this year.
Couple weeks.
Yeah. Yep. But it's crazy. Not only did Marvel, and then after Disney acquired it, continue to bring audiences in, but something really amazing happened where audiences were actively and emotionally invested in all of it.
Yeah.
Like, not just the main hero, but the side characters' arcs. Everyone is so invested into all of it. And I'm like, I'm just blown away. So I'm like, dude, I think the MCU outdid Star Wars. I mean,
that's totally true. Even the tiniest characters, or what seemed like a tiny character, like Agent Coulson in the first Iron Man.
Right.
Like, let's take this guy and make a whole TV series around the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah.
It's just, the stuff I respect, admire, am a fan of when it comes to the MCU far outweigh the faults, which the MCU, not perfect at all, and no one that's been a part of the whole thing has ever come out and been like, they're all great. The actors and the production, everyone has come out and been like, yeah, these couple are clunkers. We're not big fans of that. But
yeah.
But it's crazy how they made sure, especially when they wrapped it all up, how to connect everything. And that'll be the conversation for part 2. But
yeah,
the MCU is just, it is such a unique, I'm very happy that we've gotten to experience this, because I mean, growing up, who would have ever thought? I mean, we had a handful of superhero movies. The biggest one we had was the X-Men franchise, and every new installment of X-Men just got progressively worse.
Yeah, we barely had a universe. Like, all of the Batman movies, you'd have 1 or 2 sequels that tied together. There wasn't really a comic book universe ever.
Right. We had, like, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, which the first 2,
decent.
The third one is
opposite of decent.
Go away. It's so crazy how, like, it all kicked off with a giant gamble. It's Jon Favreau and Robert Downey Jr., man. Just incredible.
And Kevin Feige, I think that Kevin Feige, I'm sure everybody has said it. Excuse me. Kevin Feige has been kind of the person steering the ship since the beginning, and I think he deserves a massive amount of credit for an incredible undertaking actually paying off. And it's interesting to see the first couple of movies as they're trying to figure out what it is. Like you said, they haven't figured out where this is going, what the ultimate goal is yet. And then as things kind of start rolling, you get into phase 2, and it's like, okay, now we have a pattern. Let's just keep doing this. And it does get a little repetitive. People start to get burnt out. But they're trying to balance over 11 years holding audiences' attention, and then also like putting out enough movies to hold their attention, but also not burning them out. And you get a little crazy between you can tell they pick up the pace for sure as far as new movies being released constantly.
Well, and I remember being one that was very much like, man, I feel like I'm getting burned out on the MCU. I feel like I'm burned out on superheroes.
Yeah.
Like, it just felt that way. I think I started getting a little overly critical, especially after, like, post Man of Steel. Not to bring the comparison, but you already said we're going to inadvertently and just kind of be forced to do some pairing.
Yeah.
Whereas my heart lies with the DC characters, Batman, Superman, all them. I think part of my burnout on the MCU was more of like, God damn it, why are these always so successful? And even the bad ones are still like loved. And then Suicide Squad comes out and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. It's all over.
So I think some of my over-critical moments or burned out moments were more like jealousy. Because now I can binge all 22 without a blink of an eye. And I'm like, yeah, it feels like... And this is the crazy part, one of the crazy... When you binge all 22 in a row...
Yeah.
It genuinely feels like one big story because there's always just enough little connections between every one that help move the whole arc of like Thanos and the stones. So it's like,
it feels like reading comics. It feels like when you read a comic series and there are like different writers and different artists on them, and then something comes up and you're like, oh, this Tesseract is from this thing that I saw previously, and now everything's coming together. And so it seems different, but also part of this whole, I guess.
Yeah. No, that might be the best way to put it. Is watching the MCU feels like reading a 22-issue comic arc, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what fans want ultimately, which is good.
Yep. Well, and then you also got to put the little cherry on top. You already brought up Kevin Feige. I always pronounce it like 4 different ways. He embraced letting the superheroes be the superheroes. So the costumes, some of them are updated and kind of made a little prettier.
Yeah.
But he kept a lot of like the costuming, the way they explain. I mean, everything's just taken at, oh, you have superpowers. Okay. Oh, Thor exists, which means that should drastically change the entire way people view everything, like belief system wise. And everyone just takes it as, oh, so Odin and them, that's all real. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on.
There's a demigod from another dimension. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and they take it even more, I guess, at face value, where they don't... None of the characters, other than Spider-Man, that normally have alter egos, use alter egos. Like, I mean, at the very beginning, Iron Man says, hey, guess what? World, I'm Iron Man.
Right.
Like, Thor doesn't use his alter ego at all. He's just, I'm Thor. I'm this guy who just crash landed here. So, it's kind of...
Everyone knows that Steve Rogers is Captain America.
Yeah.
But he'll still wear the helmet. It's very, like, at least for the first phase and a half, he still wears the helmet.
Yeah. It's just because it looks cool.
It does. So there's so much to praise. And there is a lot to be critical on. We'll get to that. I know you and I'm predicting we're going to agree on 3 of these that we don't necessarily care for.
Yeah. That's probably true. I know 2 for sure.
I know 2 for sure.
Yeah. I'm interested about the 3rd. I might be forgetting one, but I'm sure it's out there.
Now, as we're getting into this, you and I watched these movies in different orders.
True. Yes. Should bring that up. So we're going to talk through and talk about all of them, at least a little bit. Obviously, We're not going to go super deep. We've been doing a full episode about a single movie. We're not doing that,
No.
obviously. But we did want to talk all the way through. I guess this one's a little different than our James Bond episode, where we just did our top 10 favorite James Bond. There's basically the same amount of Marvel movies as there are James Bond movies, but doing things a little differently. So yeah, we watched them in different orders. I watched them in the release order because I hadn't seen them in that order in a really long time. I just kind of had been piecemeal watching them, and then some of them I hadn't seen forever. So I was like, I'll watch them in the order they're released and see how that goes, and which is different from you.
Yeah, I watched them in the actual viewing order.
The chronological time frame of the movie order.
Yeah. Which I was all, because that's the only way that I watch the MCU now.
Okay.
But it does come with a couple faults when you watch it that way.
Yeah.
Primarily
Is it
in the post-credit scenes. There's a few that do not add up with what's coming next.
Yeah. There are some that directly tease the very next released movie.
Yeah. So you kind of have to just, like, shrug those off.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
it's more like, just remember this for whenever you get around to it.
Like the Captain Marvel post-credit scene doesn't really work when you watch that movie, when you start the whole thing off with her. Well, you start it with Captain America, and then you watch her.
Yeah.
And her post-credit does not really sync up until...
That's way later.
Endgame, so...
Yeah. She was released way late in the series.
Yeah. Which is one of my critiques, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Okay. So this first episode is the first 11. We were gonna go talk about them now in release order and start with Iron Man.
Yep.
And this episode with Avengers
Age of
Ultron, which is, I didn't realize until after we had decided that's like one movie before the end of Phase 2, so we could have just done Phase 1 and Phase 2 and then Phase 3 for another episode. But it made sense at the time.
It did.
Like, Avengers Age of Ultron kind of wraps that section up. It's weird that Ant-Man just kind of hangs out there as the end of Phase 2. But true. I don't decide it. I don't work at Disney World.
Right. Let's dive.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
I'm so ready for this. I've got my Excelsior cider, and I'm ready to go.
All day.
I could do this all day. So, Iron Man, we kind of already talked about Iron Man a little bit.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing what Jon Favreau was able to do with it.
Man.
And it is one of my favorites. It holds up. It just has a standalone superhero movie.
It's so good. Even if they had never done this huge arc, that first Iron Man by itself is like, this might be how like superhero movies going forward might need to be. It's such a great origin story. It's such a great introduction to a character that, although is widely known as like crazy important, one of the big guys of the Avengers, but not well known, which is the whole gamble on that. I love all the risk taking. It paid off so well. I thought it was a very interesting. When you rewatch the whole thing, that first Iron Man becomes so like way more important than you ever realized, just in terms of setting up the character of Tony Stark.
Yeah. They're
really introducing you to all of his like OCD, his obsession with having to tinker, his obsession with how do I make things better, especially after going through traumatic events and what that starts doing to him with the PTSD. That first Iron Man really does such an awesome job of getting you ready to watch this guy kind of struggle.
Yeah.
As the whole timeline goes on.
and Robert Downey Jr. is such a likable dick. Like and I think the character of Tony Stark does kind of mirror Robert Downey Jr.'s life, where he's always kind of been in the spotlight, like in the comics, Tony Stark has like an alcoholism addiction, so there's been like the parallels there for sure. I think he just fills that role so well and plays as just this brilliant guy who's so likable and is kind of becomes, because it was set up at the very beginning, he becomes the line all the way through the series.
Yeah,
it works really well. And you set up, there's so many pieces in this movie that they are just like going back now. I'm sure they didn't think about it at the time, but going back now, they're hugely important and great choices to have. Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts, to have Paul Bettany as Jarvis. Like, all of these little things add up later and pay off later.
Yeah, Paul Bettany as Jarvis. One of my favorite tidbits is because all he did was record a handful of lines for it. So I don't even think he was actually in a recording studio. I think they just set something up like a remote studio at his house or wherever, and he just read the lines real quick and moved on with his life. He had forgotten that he was even a part of that first Iron Man.
Until they're like, hey, we need you to be Vision.
Well, until they were like, hey, we're making Iron Man 2, and we kind of need you.
You signed a contract,
right,
sir.
Right.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that first Iron Man, it's genuinely just, it's so special. It's so cool. It's like, I could rewatch it every time I binge the whole thing. That first Iron Man ends, and I'm constantly like, I could watch it again. I could just restart it and watch it again.
Yeah.
Which cracks me up, because when it came out in theaters, I went to a matinee, saw it, not expecting a lot.
Yeah.
And then that same night, I was still married at the time, I remember telling my wife and one of our friends, like, yeah, we're going to go see Iron Man tonight. You guys have to watch Iron Man. I ended up seeing that first Iron Man like 4 times in the theater.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. First 2 on the same day, because it was just so... Man, I was so happy and excited about it.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 times that we ended up seeing it were just on whims. Like, hey, we're bored. Let's go see a movie. What's playing? I'm not really into anything. Is Iron Man still there? Yep. All right, let's go watch Iron Man. So
I know I'm going to have a good time at Iron Man.
Right. It was just, man, that first one's so good. I honestly, to this day, I have no complaints about that first Iron Man. I really have nothing bad to say about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like we mentioned, it's interesting that they chose to start with Iron Man because he wasn't that well known. Marvel has always, before this universe, had always been kind of the second player. They had always been below. Like, if you try to say, oh, who should they have started with? I guess Thor might be a little bit more well known, Hulk more well known, but I mean, Captain America, obviously everybody knows Captain America, but it's not cool.
It's always been the X-Men or Spider-Man. Like, that's really, when it comes to Marvel movies, that's all anyone's really ever known or focused on. Everyone forgot Blade came out in the late 90s.
Yeah. And everybody tries to forget the Fantastic Four because they rebooted.
Oh, yeah, and the Fantastic Four, like, people forgot about those being Marvel properties. It was always Spider-Man or the X-Men.
Yeah.
That's it. So for them to really, like, let's try this route, best payoff ever. Yeah, and I think that they did really good and interesting things, especially things that I personally like, where they have Easter eggs and they have hints, and they have Captain America's shield on Iron Man's desk, and they have, like, Nick Fury show up at the end, and you're like, you feel like this is building to something big. Well, I remember when Nick Fury shows up in that first post-credit, the thing that kicked off the huge trend. I remember being like, oh, that'd be so cool if they would be able to pull off an Avengers movie And I remember having that thought, and at the same time being like, but there's no way that'll ever happen. I just don't see how they could do that.
How small like our frame of mind was. It's like, if they could get to an Avengers movie, that would be the best. That would be like the goal.
It would be so cool, but it's never gonna happen. And then sure shit, here it comes.
And not only, we'll definitely give you an Avengers movie, but we'll have this 4-phase plan for
not only,
several Avengers movies.
Not only are you getting the Avengers, but you're getting like the ultimate Marvel fight. You're getting all of it, minus some of the properties that they no longer own, but that should be changing now because I think they finally acquired all the rights. So,
Phase 4 and beyond will be very interesting.
It will be. Now, I'm not so sure that even Phase 4 is going to be as impactful.
No, certainly not. It'll be a while, I think, before we get to anything impactful. They have to reset for a while.
Yeah. But it'll be entertaining to watch nonetheless.
Yeah. It was interesting because Phase 1, obviously building, it kind of plateaus a little bit where they're trying to figure it out. They're like, I don't know what to do. Phase 2 has some really high points, some really low points. And then Phase 3 is like, okay, now we're on the track. Let's just build, payoff.
Well, by the time Phase 3 kicked in, every audience member knew what was coming up.
Yeah.
We're all
on board.
And we all knew,
we'd bought our tickets. We're on the train. Let's just go.
We were all nervous to finish it off. But again, that's to be concluded next week.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to jump ahead, but I'm like, no. It's a 2-part episode. We don't gotta rush this.
Take it easy.
But so I don't have too much more to say on the first Iron Man. It's one of those, even if you're not a comic book fan, I feel like that first Iron Man, you should watch it.
It's just a good movie.
It's just a
really good movie. Yeah. The next movie in the list, The Incredible Hulk from 2008, I think a lot of people forget or don't rehash this movie. And I'm guilty of that because for a long time, kind of getting ahead of ourselves again, when we get to Avengers and you have Mark Ruffalo take over Hulk, the way that movie starts, for me, I took it, when I first saw it, I took it as, Joss Whedon is rebooting or resetting everything. But now we're revisiting it all and I'm like, oh no, I was dumb. This is actually... That actually makes sense the way that it picks up because of where this movie ends and all this stuff.
Well, there's a lot of moments in like Iron Man 2 and maybe it was just Iron Man 2. Yeah. Where like they show footage from the Incredible Hulk playing in front of Tony and he's like, you see the Hulk, or at least some of the destruction the Hulk is causing. Now, I enjoy The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton. I thought, I liked that it was kind of a darker tone film. I liked the idea of, hey, this general, he's really the bad guy. The Abomination is just kind of your cherry on top, but the general is really your bad guy. He even has that line of like, as far as I'm concerned, that man's whole body is government property. If anyone has been listening,
Batman's whole body.
What?
You said Batman's
No,
whole
I
body.
didn't. I said that man. I said that.
Okay. It sounded like Batman to me.
That, T-H-A-T. That man's whole body is government property, which is funny to me every time he says it, especially for people that have been listening to you and I long enough. They know how you and I feel about that kind of stuff. We're like, well, fuck you very much.
You don't own me.
But I enjoy The Incredible Hulk. I think it was stumbly. And when it was released, everyone already knew, well, maybe I shouldn't say everyone, but there were already stories going around of how the production was kind of a mess, thanks to Edward Norton trying to be, the all, I control everything, where Marvel was like, you actually don't. And
well, he rewrote a lot of the movie, like took it upon himself to rewrite a lot of the movie, and didn't end up getting writing credit.
Yeah, and there were so many creative differences, and since then, both Norton and Kevin Feige, and I forget who directed the Hulk.
I'm sure I could tell you here. Oh, Louis Leterrier
or whatever.
Leterrier.
They've all come out and been
French
like,
guy.
yes, it was creative differences, but we still appreciate like what Norton did for it. And Norton's even come out and been like, there is no way I would have fit into this universe. They knew what they were doing. Nothing I was going to do was going to fit. So it was almost like bad blood at first, but everyone kind of got the bigger picture of like, we were never on that same page. I know Norton had tried to get rid of like as much of the violence or action as possible. He wanted like just straight character study of Bruce Banner and the Hulk, whereas Marvel was like
the old show.
Yeah, and Marvel was
where it's
like,
just like
no one
Bruce
wants
Banner.
that, dude. They want to see the Hulk.
Yeah, we did that in the 70s, where he just kind of walked around and was a sad, lonely hobo.
Yeah. It was a popular show. I watched it
Incredibly.
as a kid. It was very fun. It was enjoyable.
Yeah, it was incredibly popular, and there are several nods to it for fans. If there are fans of the 70s Hulk TV show in 2008 who are in their 40s, there are several nods to it, obviously, with Lou Ferrigno and
the green eye. As soon as you see the green eye, it's like the exact same shot as Bruce Bixby's was. I remember watching it in theater and seeing that and being like, ooh, that felt purposeful. And it was. I enjoy the Hulk.
Built-in credits.
I do laugh a lot, though, when I watch it, because there are certain things in it that they did not continue with for like the rest of the series. Well, they kind of brought one thing back in Endgame, but on a much better level, in my opinion. But the Hulk talks in the Incredible Hulk, which was new for Hulk fans.
Not generally a big talker, that Hulk.
Right.
But they used Lou Ferrigno's voice, which is fun.
Yes. Yeah, they did. But I don't think it's as bad of a movie as it kind of has a reputation for. It's got some parts in it that I actually really, really, really love. But it is kind of a jumble, stumbly movie.
I remember people complaining about how dark it was, and it was hard to tell the difference between Abomination and Hulk when they're fighting. That's mostly the critique I remember from the time. It also came out not that long after Ang Lee's Hulk movie.
Right.
It was 5 years or something.
Which we don't need to mention the disaster that movie was. You thought...
But I think the proximity negatively affected it, where people were like, oh, this is... They didn't know that we were building to something new yet. It was like, it had happened so soon, it could just be a very immediate reboot or a very near sequel, so it's kind of a weird thing.
Coming on the heels of Iron Man as well, there was also that question of, is this going to be connected? Like, is this a second installment to what Iron Man set up, or what's going on? Because you get, in the opening credits, you get Stark Industries kind of flashes on newspaper articles. Tony Stark's name gets tossed around. You're like, all right, there's got to be something going on. And then they were trying to set it up to be the connection.
That might be why they moved. So the post-credit or the mid-credit scene, didn't they move it to the end of the movie when they actually put it on DVD and stuff?
Yeah, it's pretty much right at the end.
So this, don't leave, don't miss out. Right. Forget that this is part of this universe we're trying to put together. It also came out right after. It came out 5 weeks after Iron Man.
It was
very
like the
shortest gap between movies throughout the whole thing.
Of the whole MCU, well, no, that's wrong. There were a few of the MCU movies I only saw the one time in the theater, The Incredible Hulk being one of them. Not because I didn't like it. I enjoyed it. I just it felt like an odd choice to be the second installment or second release. Mm-hmm. If you were building up the universe, it still feels kind of that way. You already brought it up. A lot of people kind of forget that one's a part of it.
Yeah, which is weird. Like, if I'm looking at it on paper, I would say we need Hulk pretty early on. He's one of the most well-known characters. But yeah, maybe it's just the way it's executed or something. It doesn't land like Iron Man did.
It lands, but it's nowhere near the same way. And then seeing how they handled the Hulk's introduction in the first Avengers, it almost feels like, had we not had a Hulk movie, this would have worked just fine.
Right, and I think that was part of my confusion when I first saw it. It felt like reintroducing him for the first time, and so I was like, oh, okay, so this is Hulk now in this universe, and all the other Hulk stuff were standalone movies. That's fine, I can not remember those. And so I didn't, and then I realized I was wrong later on.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still very entertaining. It's got some really cool parts in it. Tim Roth,
love Tim Roth.
He's awesome in that movie. I think one of the things that the Incredible Hulk kind of got tripped up on was setups. So they set up what is his name? Tim Drake Nelson. Is that?
Yes.
So they set up
Tim Blake Nelson.
Yeah, Tim. Thank you. He gets a little bit of the serum from the Abomination, or the Abomination's blood. One of the two gets in a cut, and you see his head start to warp, which had everyone thinking oh, cool, we're getting a second Hulk movie. That never came, and it was no, we never planned on a sequel, folks. Sorry. So I think they tried having a couple little, we could do this, and then never went back to it. Rumor has it that Abomination is supposed to be making another appearance in Phase 4 at some point.
He just showed up in the trailer for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Yeah, thank you.
And the 10 Rings, you may recall from the Iron Man movies, is that terrorist group that Mandarin belongs to.
Well, we'll get to Iron Man 3 in a little bit.
But they kidnapped Tony Stark in the first Iron Man.
Right, they did. Yeah.
10 Rings is the whole thing. So apparently Abomination's in that, I guess.
Yeah, which will be interesting.
Which is
to see him
September
come back
of this year.
After so long, never even getting mentioned again.
Yeah. Everybody's going to be who is this?
Right, who's this Joker again? He looks weird.
No. I'm here for it. He was cool.
Yeah. He talked a lot better than the Hulk did. But
that's true. I hope Tim Roth comes back.
I think he is playing him again.
Really?
I think
I
so.
love Tim Roth.
I think so. That first Hulk, the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
It's a decent film. I think it also kind of... So 2008 was interesting for superheroes.
Yeah.
Because we had The Dark Knight come out.
The greatest superhero movie of all time.
And just blew everyone away of so this is a superhero film.
Yeah.
And then Iron Man comes out and everyone went, oh my god, this is also a superhero film. It felt so huge. It felt awesome. And then we got The Incredible Hulk and everyone went, this does not feel like
Yeah. This is what we're used to. This is X-Men 3.
It felt like a little more polished early 2000s comic book movie. Yeah. But it felt like it should have come out at that time as well. It just had better effects. Right. That did not transfer as well on release.
I did like the effects at the time. I liked that jacked Hulk look and and references to the show and the comics, like they reference kind of how he's grayish and stuff. So it was cool.
Yeah. Now all around.
But
I mean, okay. So we did, obviously, if you can't guess, our rating system on the first Iron Man would be midnight completely.
Completely.
What would you put Incredible Hulk on our 6 to midnight?
I'm grading on a curve compared to the entire MCU. So relative to the MCU, it's not that bad. I don't mind it as much as a couple of the other ones.
True.
It's medium. I think it does the job.
Yeah. So
I would
it's like
give it like a 3-ish.
Yeah.
3 o'clock. Does the job.
Yeah, it does the job. I'd say.
And I'm forgiving of it because it's early on. They're still trying to figure out what they're doing.
That is true.
And all that stuff.
And that I think that's another thing that kind of doesn't help it, is because it was so early on and everyone was still trying to figure out, are we actually going to be able to pull off kind of a grand scale? Who knows?
Right. Right.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I don't know.
A little more critical?
I think I might be more critical of it now than I used to be.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel like it fits. When you asked me, does the Incredible Hulk count in this, when we were figuring this out, and I remember being like, of course it does. I rewatch it every time I watch it. And then I watched it with you asking that in my mind, and I was like,
yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit. Like it doesn't have the same feel.
Yeah, it doesn't feel
others.
like it fits. It just has a end last scene that ties it in because Tony Stark shows up.
Right. So I might give it like a 4.
Oh, okay.
Kind of
getting a little flow in there, but
yeah,
nothing. Yeah,
but not enough to really like do a whole lot.
Yeah. This whole first section is kind of rocky for me. Iron Man 2, which is next.
Yeah.
2, and you mentioned also because 2008 was such a huge year for superhero movies, and Christopher Nolan is now making movies with IMAX cameras and being absolutely insane. It's interesting because Jon Favreau was like, oh, that's cool, I'll try using IMAX cameras, and then he decided can't do that because all of the visual effects from the 2010 era would not look good blown up to that resolution. So decided against it immediately. But it's also weird. Iron Man 2 is the largest gap between any movies in the whole Infinity Saga. There was like almost 2 full years between Incredible Hulk and Iron Man 2.
Oh, I did not realize that it was the largest gap.
Yeah, it's 2010. Both of those, Iron Man and Hulk, came out in 2008.
Yeah,
May 2010, Iron Man 2 comes out.
Huh. I guess I thought it was
we had like
weird.
Gotten things rolling, and then it was like, okay, now pump the brakes. We don't know what comes
Well, I
next.
think that also ended up having to do with like, because after that first Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. became huge.
Yeah.
And his career blew up. And I remember he was in a whole bunch of like random movies all of a sudden. His name was everywhere. And then he also became Sherlock Holmes around that time. So
right. And they're trying to create another whole franchise with him. Yeah.
yeah. So knowing that and then hearing it had a large gap, I could see it. That makes sense.
Yeah. It's the main, I think, thing that I take away from Iron Man 2. 2 main things. Number 1, they replace Rhodey, who was Terrence Howard, is now Don Cheadle, going to be Don Cheadle forever. I honestly liked Terrence Howard. I'm kind of sad that there was that, whatever happened, falling out, I don't know. But I liked it. Don Cheadle's fine. Nothing against Don Cheadle, but it makes me a little sad. I liked him more.
I was a fan of Terrence Howard in that first Iron Man. I thought he played Rhodey well. Thought him and Robert Downey Jr. seemed to be able to work with each other fairly well.
Good chemistry.
Yeah. Don Cheadle took me some getting used to.
Yeah.
Which usually with recasts, we're Batman fans. We were used to recasts.
Yeah. And James Bond fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he took a little getting used to because he gave Rhodey kind of a new confidence.
Yeah.
And that was like, oh, so not only did we get the new actor, but he totally I'm not doing what the last guy did.
Yeah.
And, the most you're going to know is me and Tony are friends and have known each other forever, but I'm going to be pretty confident, pretty he's what is he, a general or something like that?
He's like a lieutenant colonel or something.
Something like that. He's a higher ranked
pretty up
officer.
There. Yeah, he can get away with stuff that normal people couldn't do.
Yeah, and he plays it that way.
He seems like kind of, in this one, he seems more of like a ride or die friend.
Yeah.
Where in the first one, he's more of a Boy Scout. Like there's that conflict between, we need to follow the rules. Rhodey says, I need to follow the rules. And Tony says, no, let's do whatever the fuck we want to do.
Right.
And so they're friends and there's conflict and that's fun.
Yeah.
In this one and going forward, Rhodey's more like, I just happen to work for the government, but they kind of let me do whatever I want to do.
I think Don Cheadle fits how the MCU was going and ended up going. I think he fits better with all of the cast than I think Terrence Howard would have.
That's fair. I think that's accurate.
Nothing really against Terrence Howard, but when you throw a huge fit over Robert Downey Jr., the top billed star of your movie, makes more money than you. I don't know. I kind of felt like whenever I read his whole thing about being butthurt that he didn't make as much money as Robert Downey Jr., I'm constantly like, no shit.
Naturally.
You're not the star. You're not even third name billed on it. You're
right. Right. Yeah, that's fair. Maybe he's a bit of a diva.
But I know money has been an interesting thing for the MCU where everyone almost quit the entire thing after the first Avengers due to money disputes.
Well,
so
you get that leverage and they're like, no, we need all of you constantly. And then you have that negotiating leverage. They did the same thing with Friends. They're like, let's just all negotiate for the most money we can make.
Right.
And you're in a massive franchise making billions of dollars, so
you
why
can
not?
afford it.
Right.
Iron Man 2, it's fun. I hated it the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
Because I was really bummed to see them turn the PTSD and the alcoholism kind of into a joke for Tony Stark. I did not like that. Now, I'm going to put a little asterisk on that. Having rewatched it so many times, I no longer take it as a joke. I take it as he's actually just acting out, which everyone ends up doing when they go unchecked. So I no longer hate Iron Man 2. I actually don't think it's as bad as a lot of people think it is. I definitely wish the villain Whiplash would have been fleshed out a little bit more. But this is what Iron Man 2 ended up kind of exposing with the MCU villains, and this became pretty common through most of their movies, where the villains were very simple. There was not a whole lot of complexity to them. Their personalities were all pretty much the same. We hate Tony Stark. We hate Captain America.
Yeah. They did something wrong or mean to me, and now I'm going to destroy the planet.
Yeah, it became very common. You knew the villains. Right. And then, you didn't even watch the MCU for the villains at one point. You were just watching it just be like, oh, it's the characters on the screen. which is probably one of the bigger faults of the MCU. But Iron Man 2 to me was the one that really kind of like made that apparent of handling the villains was gonna be a little bit simple.
Right. Right. No, that's totally true. And I think that is one of my barriers to entry as a massive DC fan.
Yeah.
I come from a world of Batman where all of the villains are better than, more interesting than the heroes even. Like, the villains are the best part. And so to have not complex villains or not that interesting or scary villains, it didn't work as well for me.
Yeah, and oh, we forgot to say, if you don't know our episodes already, spoiler heavy.
Yeah. Yep, spoiling the MCU, which nobody on the planet has not seen it, but in case you have been under a rock,
we still gotta say it.
Yeah, we're going to spoil them.
The final fight with Whiplash is such a letdown.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say goodnight to my daughter real quick. Give me a minute.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm back. Yeah, their fight.
Yeah.
I hate their fight. I don't hate the movie these days, but I hate that fight. It's so cool.
Are you talking about the Formula One racetrack
I actually
fight?
like the Formula One sequence.
That's the first, where they first meet.
Yeah. I like that sequence because him chopping those cars in half with like the crazy whips, and he's daunting in that part, you know? He gets hit by the car, crushed by the car. Happy Hogan runs him over like 3 times, and the dude's still moving. So I'm like, this could be... I mean, if you continued that kind of intimidation...
Yeah.
But then we got Sam Rockwell crying like a little punk, and and Whiplash wanting his parrot, which I hate.
Yeah.
I hate the parrot bit.
Yeah.
I hate the parrot bit. It just...
I don't get it.
I don't get it. But no, their final fight with all the drones, and then Whiplash shows up, and you're like...
Yeah.
His suit kind of reminds me of... Warmonger from the first Iron Man, of Jeff Bridges' suit.
Yeah.
And you're like, I get why they're making him do that again, but I remember having the thought of like, don't make all of Iron Man's villains
right
like a dumbed looking down version of it. It worked in the first one because it made sense.
Right. Yeah, that's another problem that the Marvel Universe tends to have, is that the villain is just the mirror image of the hero, and they're basically the exact same as the hero, like Hammer is in this one, where he's Tony Stark, but they have a rivalry, a young, rich, brilliant billionaire in a suit. Same thing with the first movie, and so you tend to just be... Iron Man's villains are other guys in robot suits, and and it tends to not be that different or diverse.
And I remember being a little worried about that. Although after Iron Man 3, I kind of would have taken another villain in an armored suit, but we'll get to that in a bit. But now when I watch Iron Man 2, I don't hate it. I think it does... Iron Man 2 does a lot of kind of confirming, yes, we're gearing up for the full thing. Like, yes, this is coming. We are working towards it. They even kind of make it a meta moment of like, yeah, we're actually building... We're looking at candidates for this Avengers initiative as they're like figuring out what characters are going to be making. Like,
yeah, and the second big takeaway from Iron Man 2 is that they introduced Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow. So that's a big deal.
Which was a huge deal for everyone, especially young males who were like, holy crap.
Yeah, she's got a tight outfit on.
I like her as Black Widow. We forgot to mention that we're trying to get these episodes done before the Black Widow prequel.
Before Black Widow. Yep.
I kind of will always feel they should have made the Black Widow movie right after Iron Man 2.
Oh, for sure.
I will always think you should have done this early in the MCU. One, because her character, you focus more on her and just the mystery around her throughout Iron Man 2 than you do a whole lot of the other crap.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's kind of captivates your attention.
Yeah.
For
sure. Plus, I'm always shocked that the MCU, because Disney had it at this point.
Yeah.
I'm always shocked they did not decide to be like, oh, strong female-led movie? They never did that until now. But I'm like, how did you
they weren't
not
as
do
woke
that?
back then.
How did you not decide that early on? That would have been such a huge, like, this will sound insensitive, but cash grab.
Right.
It would have been huge. It's probably going to be a massive movie regardless, but I personally feel it would have worked better than having to do it prequel style. I think it would have been way more interesting.
Yeah, and especially serving the overall arc of the story, she has a very heartfelt thread throughout. And her relationship with Hawkeye and and her relationship with Hulk, like we've been through this whole. She's deeply invested in the whole thing from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how connected she is to everyone. And not just, she's like Tony where she's appearing in everyone's movies. She's connected through, like, showing the human side of all of these superheroes. She made Steve Rogers kind of learn what it is just to have a life. Like, kind of just relax. She's got... her and Hulk, their whole
romance? Somewhat romance.
Yeah, and then her and Hawkeye, where Hawkeye, I mean, his big reveal in Age of Ultron, super. I love that. But yeah, Black Widow went from being like the mysterious eye candy of the MCU to being one of the most loved characters. And I really think only Scarlett Johansson could have pulled that off. I can't imagine. And that might just be because we've been watching these characters and actors for so long, but...
Yeah, she's been in a ton of those movies. I will say, her hairstyle in Iron Man 2, not my favorite. She changes her hairstyle every movie.
It does,
This is the worst one, though.
Oh, see, I don't know if I would say it's the worst one.
Yeah?
It's the one that makes her look the youngest.
Okay.
I don't know. The blonde in Infinity War has always kind of thrown me off a little bit. Or the straight... No, not the blonde. Sorry, the straight dark red in Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
That always throws me off.
Winter Soldier is a dark movie. But we're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
So, Thor. Thor is such an interesting one for me, and I remember not really liking it when it first came out. But rewatching it, I think it's not that bad now. This first one, specifically the first one.
The first Thor.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. The first Thor is different, and it's a little bit. You're not used to this kind of style where this is super fantasy with like Nordic deities and all this mythology you're used to, kind of, but also different. And then all of a sudden, juxtaposition, fish out of water situation with him in the modern world, and it's pretty funny. Like they do a lot of like jokey jokes.
Yeah, that became one of my least favorite things about the Thor films.
Yeah,
were the jokey jokes. Having rewatched it so many times, I kind of get the jokey jokes, and I think Chris Hemsworth does a good job of being the unassuming comic relief.
Certainly very likable. Certainly very great choice as Thor. Yeah.
I remember watching the first Thor, and my first thought about halfway through it was like, oh, this isn't a good movie, but it's entertaining, so I'm gonna and I know that it's connected, so I'll enjoy it for that aspect. I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people say it is.
Did you already feel like you were on the Marvel train and you just had to see every movie that came out?
By the time Thor came out, and Iron Man 2 hits, and it's basically your confirmation. Yeah. We're doing
this is a thing. Yeah.
So then Thor comes out, and Thor was just another connecting piece that I was like, yep, we're doing it. We're doing it. And obviously with Thor, it felt different, but it still fit because they were introducing the aspect of like magic, and they really started hinting at the universe, like the literal universe stuff that was going to play heavy later on. So
they show, for comic fans who know what could be coming to, or what we could be building to, they show the Infinity Gauntlet. They show like lots of shit.
Yeah, well, and then you start hearing, I think he mentions it in the first Thor of like, you hear about, well, the Tesseract is brought up, and for comic book fans, everyone's like, wait a minute. If that shows up, then something's got to be, the magic aspect really started showing up. It felt weird, but it's vital to the MCU. So I forgive that first Thor's super clunkiness.
Yeah.
Because it was a setup for the expanded part of the universe we were going to be getting. Whereas Iron Man and Iron Man 2 were like, yeah, we're going to be doing Avengers. Thor was kind of the confirmation of like, the scale is going to get wild. Right.
Yeah. Yes, we have Avengers, and Thor will be in that, and we need a Thor movie, but all these other things are coming after that.
Right. So, and
so we need to sow the seeds.
Thor did a great job of sowing some like super nerdgasm moments. So.
Yes, certainly worth it for that.
But it's such a... The ending is so odd to me. Yeah. Because the movie spends so much time being kind of like the comedic relief of the MCU. And then the ending shows up, and you have Thor like sacrificing himself to the giant robotic thing, Asgardian defense system. And it's like super dramatic, although I'm a big fan of heroes sacrificing themselves and making that ultimate choice.
Right.
Maybe it was the editing. It just feels like there was no real transition to it. Now, I enjoy the ending. I like the music that plays with it. I like seeing him get knocked the fuck out. But it feels like there's not much of the thing shows up, blows up parts of this tiny 2-street New Mexico town, and then Thor's like, I will sacrifice myself to save the 2 streets in New Mexico.
And he had been, it's interesting, I hadn't seen it in a long time, interesting going back to it after having seen later on movies. Thor is pretty bratty in this movie. He's a young, somewhat petulant son of Odin who is proud and feels like he deserves all these things. And so when he kind of like loses his powers or gets lesser powers and goes to Earth, a lot of the comedic moments come from him feeling like he's Thor, God of Thunder, and now he can't do all this stuff. And so maybe it felt like they had him become a hero and sacrifice his life a little bit too early, maybe not enough payoff or build up to it.
Maybe. I think it might be And I think the first Thor is one of the shortest entries in the MCU. I don't even think it's a full 2 hours. And that might, I mean, when you have that kind of time constraint, obviously that starts to hinder trying to build up, like, oh, he's starting to make the choice into being, like, learning what it is to be a leader, to be a hero, to be a king, because that's kind of his whole purpose in that first Thor movie, is he's trying to prove to Odin, I'm worthy to be king. And then he's like, you know what? I don't want to be king. Nope. I want to go. I want to go hang out with Jane Foster. Which brings me to
Jane Foster,
Natalie Portman in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting to me.
Why is that?
I don't know, and I can never pinpoint it. But I'm always like, she's better in the MCU than she was in the Star Wars prequels. Considering she was only in, like, 2 with kind of a cameo, third. Yeah. Soon to be, like, the mantle. Not a spoiler. If you haven't heard Thor 4's setup, I don't know where you've been. But,
if you missed the time that they made the comics, this has been a whole thing going on in the comics where Thor is Lady Thor.
Yeah. But we can get into speculation on that next week. I don't know. I'm always, whenever she shows up on the screen, I'm like, this is so interesting to me. I wonder what they said to her to be like, be in a superhero movie. Not just superhero movie, but like, like mythology, Nordic mythology superhero movie. Yeah. And you're kind of a clunky, smart scientist lady who falls in love with a god. Go.
He's a hot god, though. He's pretty jacked. So that's good.
He's the least jacked in the first Thor than he is for the rest of the MCU.
It's true. He gets more jacked, then he gets super doughy, but it's whatever.
Right.
The first one's weird. It's kind of weird all around. I mean, obviously, it's not weird all around, so I take that back. Anthony Hopkins as Odin, great. Always great.
Fantastic.
Tom Hiddleston as Loki, probably one of the best choices they made in Phase 1.
One of the best choices, and Loki becomes, through whatever, like, one of the characters that everyone wants to see more of, even though he's the villain for the majority of the MCU. There's something you kind of like to not like him. He's just fun to watch, even no matter what he's doing. Yeah, he's a blast to watch. It's funny I say that because he's using a laser cannon right now and he's blasting his face. That was fun. Tom Hiddleston just knocked this one out of the park. And this kind of became a thing for the MCU where some of their casting ended up being like, this is, no one can replace you.
Right. So good that the comics now start formulating, now this is Loki. All the comics need to look like this guy.
Right. Which is very common, whether it's DC or Marvel. As soon as they're like, people really like this actor or actress as his character, so we're going to not... It's not necessarily like exact face, but we're taking from the movies now. That's the new design direction. And Tom Hiddleston is that guy.
One of the biggest names in the smallest roles throughout the whole thing, Idris Elba as Heimdall, the guy who just controls the bridge. I expected more overall of him to do stuff. He really just stands there and looks cool and says cool things in this great Idris Elba voice. Idris Elba's great, but I don't think he does that much.
He doesn't do a whole lot. You share that opinion with him, in fact.
Oh, okay. So we're cool bros who know what's up.
He's been known to voice I wish they would have done more with my character throughout the whole arc of the MCU. He does seem like the kind of character that would be incredibly powerful, like strength-wise.
Right.
Obviously, he can see all.
He's like the only one responsible for guarding that, like, gateway.
Right.
So, yeah, you have to be a great warrior to prevent anyone from waltzing into Asgard.
Right. Although people tend to waltz right into Asgard.
Yeah, it seems like in every movie they tend to waltz right into Asgard. Kind of weird how that works out.
It is kind of weird. But we buy into it because that's what you do with movies.
Yeah. If it didn't happen, it wouldn't be interesting.
I do wish they would have done a little more with him.
Yeah.
I know it seemed like they were really getting on that pathway when Infinity War came out. But I have to save that kind of stuff for tomorrow or for next week. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. He just always seems so daunting to be in such a tiny role, but one of the most important roles. It's such an odd character and casting choice.
And I mean, the movie itself is kind of an odd duck. It's weird. I love Kenneth Branagh's acting, and I think that he's a good director. He directed this, but Thor has always felt like kind of a weird movie that kind of fits in. I mean, it fits in well. I like it more now going back to it, but I remember it feeling weirder when it first came out. And I don't really know why. My perception is that it didn't really take off as much as Iron Man did.
Right.
And maybe it's because people know Thor more. Maybe they had expectations about Thor. I don't know. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, for me, I enjoyed it that first time, but like I said earlier, I kind of immediately was like, oh, this is not a good movie, but it's an entertaining movie. I think it kind of took me off guard that they were trying to really push, like, the comedy. And that's kind of like the thing with the Thor movies is a lot of the comedy has felt very forced. Very like, well, we kind of established him to be the comedic relief, so we kind of have to keep doing this. Right. So you're like, you don't have to, but we're cool.
Right. And it's kind of both. They do very serious fantasy conversations between him and like Odin and like very serious people in like traditional language, but I don't know. Yeah, and then they do. Oh, he's on Earth and he is being silly now. So.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say Thor is the like, all right, movie of Phase 1.
Yeah, I'd say that too. But how do you feel about Captain America: The First Avenger?
Okay. I love the first Captain America. I do.
Yeah.
I really do. I
love all the Captain Americas. Spoiler alert.
I like two of them way more than I like one of them.
Oh, tension.
But we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, I think we all know which one you don't like less. This should be obvious, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first one, I think I especially was drawn in the beginning because the opening is very much kind of Indiana Jonesy, where it's Nazis and they're searching for like mystical things.
I love the style that it's filmed in. It has that very like old kind of film style to it, which I really, really, really enjoy. And I liked watching it take place during World War II, so I liked seeing the old vehicles and like the old suits and the old. I enjoyed it. I don't think it's a great movie.
Yeah,
but I think it's way better than a lot of people say. I mean, there's a lot worse in the MCU than the first Captain America.
yeah, for sure. And I tend to gravitate to Captain America's themes more than a lot of the other movies. I really like kind of the themes and the message of Captain America movies the most, which is they're more serious, they're more impactful and meaningful, and those are the kind of things that I like. Whereas he's very much portrayed as like this scrawny, tiny guy who looks really tiny, but he has a big heart. He's brave. He's doing what's right. He's just a good person.
He has common sense. The pole always makes me laugh. He has the most common sense out of like majority of the people around him.
Mm-hmm.
But he has like this great, and Chris Evans
is great.
Is fantastic as Steve Rogers, and he plays him so well, especially with the kind of innocence, but that like classic innocence, you know, like I'm very polite because that's just what you do.
Yeah.
And so his character on all aspects doesn't really fit into the world around him, but he's like constantly on this life mission to do what he can to save the world he doesn't fit into. I really like Chris Evans' take on Captain America. I really like how they've handled the character. And that first movie is it's fun. It really is fun.
I like the whole thing. I like how they start him out scrawny and he transitions to being this super
you get to see him actually become
serum.
the super soldier.
And I like how they go through like the selection process where they're looking for that special like thing that they can't really describe.
Well, it's not just
a physical
about
ability.
Yeah. It's not just how strong are you. It's like
right,
because the serum affects what your personality or your heart actually is. So they're trying to find someone who won't be easily corrupted or corrupted at all. And they find it in the scrawny kid from Brooklyn.
Right. Yeah, who's just going to do the right thing. And I like that. And I like you said, all the war stuff. And this movie does a lot of the Marvel movies, I will say, do a good job of giving you breadcrumbs or hints. Everybody knows, obviously, that Tony Stark's going to become Iron Man. Everybody knows that Steve Rogers is going to become Captain America. Yeah. So until that happens, they do a lot of things of like teasing or hinting or keeping you interested. Like when he first gets bulked up and he chases that spy
with the car door.
He gets the taxi door and it has a star in the middle and uses it as a shield. And you're like, oh, that's fun.
Yeah,
like this is just a fun time that we all are in on the joke.
One of my favorite things that first Captain America does is they bring back the original classic comic book outfit, that real like shitty looking cloth outfit. And I really love how his first experience of trying to do the right thing to do his part in the war is selling war bonds. He's got to put on like this theatrical show. To me, it always cracks me up in a positive way because I'm like, this poor guy has just been like, I'm just wanting to do my part, and you have me as a sideshow. To the point where he draws a monkey in his Captain America suit. And I'm like, yeah, this is great.
He's just a trained monkey in the circus.
Yeah.
And then he finally gets to be like let loose. And I really like, obviously, Hugo Weaving's always great, but he's especially great as Red Skull.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm always bummed that he had such a bad experience, and that's why he didn't come back later on. Because I thought he was awesome as Red Skull, and I always thought, like, you could be very formidable depending on what they end up wanting to do with you, if anything. But no, I think that first Captain America, I mean, it's not the best in the MCU. By no means is it the worst. It's not even really, I wouldn't even say it's a bad movie. I thoroughly enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoy the finale of it more than the rest of the movie because of, you just see him like making that choice pretty quickly without, like, because he understands, you know, what he's got to do with the plane and how he's going to handle the fight. He's got to do whatever he has to just to continue the fight. Captain America, I think he might be one of the more important characters on, like,
oh, for sure,
what people should be looking to, not just because he's like the ultimate patriot, but his themes, what he actually stands for, what he actually believes and fights for, is very, people, you should probably be waking up right now.
Right. Yeah.
And that comes in a few movies.
Yeah, and his commitment to not letting those go, or not giving in to pressure to change, that is very noble. He's a very noble hero, and that's kind of the ones that you want. I remember Captain America being one of the movies that kind of brought me back in.
Oh, okay.
So we had several Marvel movies where I was like, they're okay, they're fine, they're nice, and I was more critical of them then than I am now. But I remember seeing Captain America and being like, this is different, and I like this kind of like I liked the first Iron Man.
Yeah.
So now I might be into it again.
Right. And I'll always chuckle. Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah.
In a Marvel superhero movie. That's too much fun. And he plays Tommy Lee Jones. He's so, like, sarcastic and just deadpan. And, like,
right.
I don't got time for your shit.
Yeah, his character works really well for what he is.
Yeah, I don't mind that first Captain America. I think I also, when it came out, it was the one that came out before Avengers. So we already knew Avengers was coming. They were already filming Avengers.
Yep.
So everyone knew that Captain America was the final piece of your main hitters.
Yeah.
Before we got the full team. And that was exciting, watching that first Captain America, knowing they're actually, like, we've made it. And I remember laughing at myself, being like, I told myself they were never going to make it this far, and here we are. You know, it's going to be coming out soon. And
yeah, we have Iron Man, we have Thor, we have Captain America. They're in different movies. I can't wait to see them together.
And they're all going to meet. Yeah, I enjoy Captain America. I have no problem really with the movie. I kind of find myself wishing it would have been treated. I think they really hit the perfect mark, spoiler alert, when they made Winter Soldier. I think Winter Soldier is the Captain America film.
For sure.
I think had the first one been a little more in that style, it probably would be regarded as one of the better installments.
Probably, yeah. It's an origin story, and they're setting things up, but they do stumble a little bit to get there. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But the enjoyment of that movie far outweigh all the little things that I would have to be like, I'm just nitpicking at this point. No, it's a fun movie. It's a cool movie.
So, Avengers. We made it through phase 1. We saw all these characters come to life on the big screens, most of them for the first time. And now we get to see them all together. I know this was like a big deal. This was the first time that we saw Hulk and Iron Man and Thor and Captain America together.
Not only was it the Avengers for the first time ever in a cinematic film, this was the first time we've seen like a universe of characters actually together. This was kind of unprecedented because we hadn't even gotten a Batman and Superman movie at this point, like ever.
Yeah,
and they are the two biggest names in all of comic books, and they never teamed them up. So this was like,
let alone Justice League. I guess the closest you could come to is like X-Men 3, where they just have like a shitload of X-Men, but it's not the same. They're not like the same. Heroes.
This was kind of unprecedented. We knew like this movie's going to be huge. There's no way it can't be huge, and it is. It is a massive film.
Right.
It does something really interesting to me where the heroes don't really work well together
Yeah.
for like 90% of the movie. They just
Right. Well, they're not a team. That's, I guess, the main point of the movie is they're not yet a team. We have these heroes who could be a team. They should be a team, but they're still separate.
Yeah, they have moments that they worked well together, like when they finally do come together and you have that shot that's going around them for the first time. It's the Avengers are there in one shot together. I remember watching that and being like, that feels heroic. I remember getting goosebumps and just being excited, like, oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm watching the Avengers fight aliens and Loki in New York.
Right. And you have the music is swelling.
And the music is so good. I have moments of oddity these days when I watch the first two Avenger movies because of everything that we have learned about Joss Whedon. And so I'm constantly like, you're a bad person. Yeah. But this movie's entertaining, so I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. To me personally, I get put in kind of a weird spot. Luckily, I don't consider the Avengers Joss Whedon's thing.
Yeah.
I don't.
I consider it the reason that he ruined Justice League. They brought him in to do Justice League because he did Avengers, but I let it go. I'm over it. I wouldn't be over it if we didn't have the Snyder Cut, but that's neither here nor there.
Which, side note, physical release comes out September 7th.
I saw that. Did you see the, trilogy
set? The box set? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be big.
Back to Avengers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember just being almost overwhelmed. Like the little comic book nerd in me feeling almost overwhelmed with that first Avengers movie that first time I watched it because it was so unprecedented. And some of those fight scenes were so cool. You had a couple nods to comic book fighting moves that the heroes did regularly. You get a quick shot like Thor and Cap with the shield, which is just fun. Yeah. You get Iron Man shooting the shield to spray the beam. Yeah. Of course, at that moment, I think everyone took that as oh, that's like Civil War. How crazy would that be? Little did we know. A few years later, we get it, but
yeah. Yeah, it's weird looking back on the first Avenger movies because I think it's important to remember how big it felt at the time. Yep. But now I look back on it and watch it, and it feels kind of small and quaint.
It feels exactly what it is, which is their first fight together. It feels like the first time. Especially if you look at Infinity War and Endgame. If you compare that first Avengers to Endgame, you're like, that first Avengers isn't even an event. It's just another installment, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a handful of aliens that show up, and they don't really mean a lot, or there's not a lot of weight to it, I guess.
I enjoy that first Avengers, though. I remember going through a phase, again, I think this was during just some jealousy that the Dark Knight trilogy was concluding, and Marvel was starting to become just this juggernaut at the box office, so I was a little bummed, a little jealous, and but I remember having moments of it's excessively destructive, and then I watch it and I'm like, it kind of is, but if you had a whole intergalactic horde of aliens coming through a wormhole to destroy your city, it'll be a little destructive.
Yeah, guaranteed. It's also, I mean, we felt the same way about Man of Steel back then, and that changed. So,
and Marvel did this really well, where they gave you a lot of destruction for a very long time, and then they decided to give you the consequence of it, but we have to wait till next week for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that may be a critique of mine, where so much of Marvel movies are quips and jokes and lightness, and which makes for a fun movie-going experience. Like, don't get me wrong, but you lack the gravity and the depth and the themes that I tend to like more. So more of a critique of mine, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree, and I remember holding that against them for a long time.
Yeah.
Until the last few movies they made, where it was like, oh,
yeah,
all of this, like, taking the destruction for granted and feeling like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
Suddenly you have very real consequences and you're facing very dire situations all of a sudden. I remember, man, I just keep, like, trying to segue.
Next week.
I know. I'll do it next week. We'll do it next week.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I enjoy the first Avenger. I mean, honestly, I enjoy the majority of the whole MCU. The first Avengers is a lot of fun.
Everybody does.
Yeah, and it's a cool action movie. You get to see a lot of fun little comic book Easter eggs throughout the whole film.
For sure.
And it's got a lot of cool shots in it. It's just got... Yeah. I thoroughly enjoy it. I think it's a well-made action movie.
Yeah.
How do you feel? I think I already know this.
Okay.
How do you feel about shawarma?
I don't think about shawarma. I don't care about shawarma. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's pointless.
It is one of two post-credit scenes I never watch.
Yeah. That's a good point. All of the post-credit scenes, except for a couple, mean something, and they get you excited, and they set up some important world-building event, or they contribute to some meaning. This is like, oh, this team that just became a team eats lunch together. Yeah, who cares? Like, nobody cares. So that's how I feel about it.
See, when I saw it that first time, I liked the shawarma post-credit scene. Because I thought...
Yeah, I probably giggled at the time.
Yeah, because it's fun after all of the insanity that we just watched. That they're just sitting down silently eating lunch together, trying this new food together.
And it's a callback to a joke that Tony makes a couple times.
Yeah, during really
we need to get shawarma after this.
Yeah, which your first couple of viewings, you don't catch.
Yeah.
So you just kind of like, oh, they're eating shawarma now. Okay.
Yeah.
But after the first couple times watching the post-credit, it very quickly became like, yeah, I don't need that one.
Yeah.
And
right. Movie's over.
Yeah. I knew that was how you felt. I just thought you should put it on video.
Yeah, that's fair. How do you feel about the new Hulk?
Mark Ruffalo as Hulk. He's great.
Yeah.
He does such a great job playing Bruce Banner, and he does such a great job transitioning into Hulk. I also liked his design more than I do the design from Incredible Hulk. I thought they made him just look better.
Yeah, I agree. And we talked about last week when we were talking about Shutter Island how underrated Mark Ruffalo is.
Yeah, and he does a lot.
He's great.
Again, where it's like most of his time as Bruce Banner, he's like in the background, or you got to watch his face because he's constantly watching everybody around him, and he's a very fun, interesting actor to watch, especially when he's not front and center, because he's constantly doing something. And I feel like he's one of those actors where he doesn't get or need a lot of direction to do that kind of stuff in the back. I feel like he's very just naturally like, oh no, this is what I would be doing because I'm going to do it anyways.
he gets his character, whether he's in Shutter Island and he's secretly a doctor. Spoiler for Shutter Island. secretly a doctor. He's watching everybody and watching all the patients and stuff. In Hulk, he's Bruce Banner. He's got the Hulk inside of him, and he's trying to not freak out, trying to not to go crazy and destroy everything. Yeah, he's great. I love him, and I'm glad that they stuck with him. I think that he works throughout the series.
Yeah, he fits really well, and his chemistry fits really well. And I think watching him and Tony Stark, that's some of the most enjoyable moments throughout.
For sure.
Because they're the two
smart guys.
dudes that just like talk nerdy mathematics and quantum multiverse stuff. So you as the audience member, you're like, I have no idea what they're talking about, but this is cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I trust them to figure it out.
Yep. Yeah, I will never forget that first time watching the Avengers because it felt so new, so different. So, like you brought up earlier, it felt so massive.
Yeah. Do you remember feeling like, where will they go from here? Like we mentioned, if they can ever build to an Avengers movie, that would be the pinnacle. That would be the peak. That's all we need. And then we get it. And then they keep putting out movies, and we're kind of like, what? Where are they going? What's going on?
So Thanos is in the first Avengers.
True, they hint.
And I remember thinking during that first Avengers the whole time, like, but Thanos is the guy. And they showed it. Yeah. So that has to mean Thanos is going to show up, right? And then he doesn't. And you're like, what the hell? But then you get the actual mid-credit scene of, like, one of his little dudes talking to him saying, like, to fight this team would be like to court death. And if you know the comics, Thanos actually does court Lady Death in the comic books. So to hear that, and then he turns and he smiles at the camera, I remember being just like, are we? Was like that the confirmation that Thanos is going to be like officially fighting the Avengers? Which was exciting, but at the same time thinking like, how do you get to him? Where do we go from here? What are you going to do? But it was very fun. I thought that the teases might be one of Marvel's best things in the MCU are the teasing. Just getting you ready for it. Because it gets crazy from here on out. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does. And it like we mentioned, kind of starts building up. Like, so we had a couple of movies at the point, but we start building up and we've gotten through all of phase 1.
Yeah.
Phase 2, there's like on a roll. So we have 2 movies every year from now on. And then when we get into phase 3, we start getting into like, oh, now we're doing 3 movies a year. And that's where you kind of get into that burnout that we talked about. People certainly felt. I felt it, but it's kept people interested, and that was the goal.
They still kept generating the biggest audiences, which was nuts.
Yeah. Avengers was the first Marvel movie to reach $1 billion.
Yep.
So big deal for sure.
Oh yeah.
Iron Man 3, second movie to reach $1 billion. People were on the bandwagon.
Oh, everyone was so invested.
Little did they know. Iron Man 3 sucks as much as Spider-Man 3, in my opinion.
It's so bad.
I'm pretty sure we saw this together.
I will never forget this. You and I saw it together, and I remember before the first big villain reveal.
Yeah.
You and I were both sitting in the theater, and I remember. Well, actually, I don't remember if we actually said it or if we were both mutually thinking.
Yeah.
You're not gonna go. Like, you're not gonna 180 this. You're not gonna fuck this up, are you? Because I kind of feel like you're about to really, really bad.
Yeah.
And then they did, but in such a worse way than I saw coming.
Yeah. It just doesn't work for me.
No, it doesn't.
And especially because they had kind of talked about using Mandarin as a villain since the beginning. He's one of the biggest Iron Man villains ever. And so they're like, okay, now Mandarin is the villain. And everybody's like, great, yes, finally, this is great. We're in the third movie. You've built up to it. You didn't waste it too early. Should be good.
Yeah, and we are all excited because we knew, like, they're not making Iron Man 4. He's getting his trilogy, and then he's just going to start showing up in other Marvel films. So everyone was like, yeah, you got to finish off on the big note. You got to finish his trilogy just in the biggest way.
And we're coming out of Avengers. The world is now different because there's a team, but now we're kind of stripping Tony down, and he's
it
on
was like
his
the
own.
reminder
Can't
that
just call Thor.
Although we have the Avengers, all of these guys are still going to have their own battles without the team. Like they're still going to have to do it, which felt very comic booky. I do enjoy like the setup videos of the Mandarin. I like Tony's PTSD really kicking in hardcore. I thought that was. I remember being like, this fits. This is going to be good as we keep going.
Yeah.
Then that kid shows up.
Yeah, the kid ruined it for me.
The kid just
like the first time we saw it, I just like I don't get the whole the relationship they have and how he's like supposed to be helping Tony reflect or become something.
I don't know. It felt like a worse version of Indiana Jones in Short Round.
Just follows him around. Very annoying.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, like, the bad guys and the henchmen in Iron Man 3 just felt so weird to me. Like, I had an easier time accepting the Chitauri on their, like, weird floater scooter thing through the sky than I did these super-powered combustible humans that vaporize people because of a drug that hacks their brains. I remember thinking when Guy Pearce showed up as like super clean cut, immediately being like, oh no, he's going to be just like Hammer from Iron Man 2. And guess what?
Yeah.
He just doesn't cry as much, but he's exactly Justin Hammer from Iron Man 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Tony pissed me off in our younger days, and I've plotted my whole life and career to destroy him.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah, and they tried to like subvert expectations by making Ben Kingsley, who's supposed to be Mandarin, is now just like an actor who's useless, powerless.
He's like so he's a drunk, he's a junkie. And
he's just the voice of Mandarin making videos and doesn't actually mean anything.
Yeah, and I remember as soon because I'll never forget. Tony is like he's cracked. He's got into this compound with all of his makeshift weaponry that he made from Home Depot.
Yeah,
and he's got an actual pistol, and he bursts into the bedroom. And that was a moment for me. I don't know about you. Kicked the bedroom door open, and like you saw the costumes, you saw the giant, clean, elaborate bed, you saw the women in the bed, and that was my head of like, oh no, you're gonna really fuck this up. Like, please don't do this.
Yeah.
But I think they're about to. And then Kingsley shows up as the junkie Trevor Slattery, and you're like, oh no. You're just like, why? You just took the one thing that was actually working and just blatantly destroyed it. It was very Spider-Man 3 moment for me. It was oh my god.
Yeah, it's like taking Carnage or
Venom.
Venom, thank you. Like taking Venom and being like, oh, this is actually just a 1,000 times worse version of something that should be cool.
Yeah, so there's installments of the MCU that I did not like the first couple times, and after having watched them a handful now, I'm like, oh no, they've grown on me, so I don't mind them as much. But Iron Man 3 holds on to that tightly of like, nope, it's my... when I watch the whole thing, because I can't watch the MCU without watching all of the installments.
Right.
Iron Man 3 comes on, that's usually the one that I like scroll the phone or go and do other things or take a nap during. Yeah. It's my least favorite. And what's funny is it ended up kind of unanimously becoming that one for the MCU. Where everyone, all the audiences were like, all right, you gave us a couple oddballs earlier, but this one sucks. You should do better.
Yeah, you gotta get your shit together. Yeah, it's weird in a lot of ways, and you do have to kind of watch it because it sets up some stuff and has a lot of the people that you care about. I mean, the movie is in flashback with Bruce Banner,
which you don't realize that until you see the post-credit scene. Or the very last scene going into the post-credred, where Bruce Banner is listening to Tony just kind of share, like, trying to get some shit off my chest. Are you sleeping? I'm not that kind of doctor, Tony. I hate that I know these lines, but I do.
Yeah. Well, and it's obvious. Anybody that you tell, oh, he's like treating Bruce Banner as a shrink, you're like, well, he's like not a therapist.
Right.
He's not like a psychologist. He's
yeah.
So it's an
well,
obvious.
And I remember, I think you and I even talked about this after we saw it. It's the only movie in the MCU that has a narrative, like, or a voiceover narrative.
Right. Narration.
Yeah, and that, I remember being thrown off immediately by that. And then it was like, oh, it's Christmas time as well, and being... Yeah, we're watching this, and I think it was like June or July. Like, what is going on with this?
Classic Shane Black Christmas movie. Yep.
And that was probably the most disappointing aspect of the whole thing to me, was that it was Shane Black.
I should be excited. It's Robert Downey Jr.
No, I was
and
excited.
Shane Black. Kiss Kiss and Bang Bang, one of my favorite movies of all time. I should be excited by this, and I was not.
Yeah, I was really bummed out by this one, actually. So that's about all I have to say about Iron Man 3.
Well, it's gonna get not great because this is the lull of Phase 2 right here.
Yeah,
Thor the Dark World. I remember being so bored watching Thor the Dark World, and rewatching it, still
kind of not. Yep, I'm right there with you, man. First time I saw it, I was like, well, it's got some cool visuals, but no one looks like they want to be in this movie. No one wants this film.
Yeah.
And the whole purpose of the whole point of Thor the Dark World was just to introduce the Ether, which is one of the stones.
Right.
They decided, instead of just introducing it, to make a whole movie revolving around it that everybody across the board was like, this sucks. What is wrong with this movie? You guys need to get back on track because you're about to lose your audience.
Yeah. It's like, we got Avengers, and that might be all we needed. We might be off.
Yeah, I remember being a little worried about the direction that the MCU was going after these first couple movies in the new phase.
Yeah.
I was very worried.
Yeah, it's actually the lowest rated on Metacritic of the whole series. Also the lowest rated on Rotten Tomatoes. Weirdly, Iron Man 2 is the second worst rated on Metacritic. Well, I guess it's tied. Iron Man 2 and first Thor.
Oh.
And then Iron Man 3 is fifth.
Well, see, Iron Man 3 should be rated super low.
I think
that
so,
was
too.
so bad.
Yeah. But Yeah, Thor: The Dark World. It's one of the ones that I tend to skip over if I can avoid it.
Well, and it's also one of the most forgettable ones.
Yeah,
You kind of forget that Thor's mom is dead until
yeah,
Endgame shows up, and then you're reminded, like, oh yeah, that's how the stone or the ether showed up, and that's, oh yeah, she's dead. I forgot about that. You're like,
yeah.
oh, Jane Foster, haven't heard your name even for like 10 movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about Dark World. To me, it was just so obvious. No one wanted to be in it. No one wanted to be a part of it. It was very much the like, we're all under contract, so here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, we're moving the ball forward, I guess.
Right. We're introducing another stone. We're introducing another stone.
Right. Yeah, just get it done, and then on to the next one.
Yeah.
Which
I think we should do, because I don't have a lot to say about it.
I agree. So, Captain America the Winter Soldier might be my favorite.
This movie is just constantly mind-blowing to me. This was the one that restored the MCU, in my opinion, and made people be like, here we go.
100%. I was like, we were on life support for a while there. Like, for a year. Because both of those shitty movies came out in 2013. April 2014 comes around, I'm like, okay, thank God we actually can enjoy these movies again.
Like, Winter Soldier, again, like I said with the first Iron Man, and I'm going to say it again with another MCU installment here in a little while. Whether you're a comic book fan or not, you should watch The Winter Soldier. This movie, it took like all the greatest elements of the Bourne trilogy or the Bourne series,
right,
and then put Captain America in the middle of it. It is, you got to pay attention to it. It is chock full of like very real kind of feeling, kind of fear with like how much power the government should or can have, and it's
and the villain is clever and very, very good, and not really what you expect.
And the villain is not just one villain. The villain is like, I mean, the villain is S.H.I.E.L.D. The villain is Hydra as a whole, which might be one of the greatest twists.
Which it should be. Hydra is so good that they would have done a terrible disservice if they didn't actually make a really good S.H.I.E.L.D. versus Hydra movie, which is kind of what this is.
Right, because Captain America is pretty much what S.H.I.E.L.D. is supposed to be. And he's right. You know, that big reveal when you find out, like, oh, Hydra has been, since very early on, pretty much right after Steve went into the dirt, or into the ice, Hydra took over. It brings up a whole lot of themes. It's very obvious to me why you and I are such big fans of this movie. I just, oh my God, it's such a cool movie. And it constantly has parts where you're like, what is happening? I watched it with my daughter, and she was just like, Dad! I was like, I know. I know. She's like, why? I was like, dude, I could try to explain it to you simply, but I can't because it has too many parallels to it.
It's a big story and a big deal, and it has a lot of meaning to it. It kind of is like, I think Winter Soldier is kind of like Terminator 2, where it makes the first one better. Yeah. Because you go back and watch the first Avenger and see his relationship with Bucky a little bit, and so it was Winter Soldier and all of that. I just love it. It's really, really good.
It's so good. And not just like in terms of comic book movie. Like, it is legitimately... Like, it's a thriller. It is so good. And this was also the one that I think made a lot of people be like, should these Russo brothers kind of take over? because they seem
Right.
to get it.
Yeah.
Like,
These guys know what they're doing.
like, ooh, you totally are forgiven for Iron Man 3 and Thor the Dark World. Like, we're not even mad anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Totally forget.
Well, and when the Winter Soldier came out, it was like right before it got released. Chris Evans had already come out and been like, I'm kind of done playing Captain America. Like, he was just tired because all these cast members under contract have to maintain certain physiques, like they have to do all of this all the time, whether they are filming or not. And Chris Evans had come out and just been like, I'm tired. This is...
Well, he went a full year without doing anything other than working out, from Avengers to Winter Soldier.
Right.
He wasn't in a movie in 2013.
Right. So he had come out and been like, I love being in the MCU. I love this character. I love playing the character, but I'm just so tired. I'm just ready to call it a day. Not everyone is Hugh Jackman that can just maintain the Wolverine status permanently.
Does it for fun.
Right.
When he's not doing Broadway.
So I remember watching The Winter Soldier knowing that Chris Evans had been hinting at wanting to leave and wondering to myself, are they giving him his out, especially when him and Bucky have their confrontation at the end? And it was very like, holy shit, Steve's going down. Like, he's...
Well, yeah, you start to think, oh, they could do what the comics did and make Bucky Captain America.
Well, and they introduced Falcon, so you're
outs.
like, oh, we have one of two choices. Both become Captain America in the comics, so which one are they going to pick?
Yeah. A lot of outs.
There were a lot of... I remember being genuinely like, if they kill him, I think I'm actually going to, for the first time in the MCU, like, understand just how invested in the characters I am. Like, I'm going to be genuinely sad if they kill Cap.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, he doesn't die, but it's like, okay, he's not dead. We're good. You know?
Yeah. No, I totally know.
Yeah, that, man, The Winter Soldier, it is just one of those movies. It stands out very high. Out of 22 films, for one to come out almost dead center, like, to be one of the best ones is good on you. Good on you.
Yeah. And certainly needed, because we needed
that win.
Redirection.
Yeah, we needed the win.
Yeah.
And it also kind of confirmed that Marvel can have balls. Like, that they can go a little darker. They can start introducing something that's going to be a little rough, you know, to get through.
Yeah. And that's honestly what I needed also. And I need that again later when we start getting into the cookie cutter, like, formula that they get into of just releasing very similar movies. I needed more meaningful story, more meaningful themes, more meaningful stakes, more meaningful characters, and because I need to be invested in that way. And so this was like a breath of fresh air. It was like, yes, exactly what I'm looking for, and about something I already cared about because I am invested. I've seen several movies at this point,
right?
So I'm on board.
We are here,
invested. Yeah.
Yeah. I was very happy to see that they could start introducing some darker themes and some more dire situations and just kind of getting you ready for what at this point, everyone knew.
Yeah.
Like, eventually Thanos still has to show up. We've been introduced to a few of the stones. Things need to start. When are we going to get this?
Yeah.
It still took a while, but...
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very slow build.
But for the most part, Phase 2, I felt, was way better than, like, Phase 1, just because you started getting that ramp up. And I got to share some fun moments with Phase 2 with my daughter, which ended up being why I probably enjoy it the most. But, Winter Soldiers, goddamn, it's such a good movie.
Yeah, and Phase 2 really finished strong.
Yeah.
So, obviously, very strong with Winter Soldier. We go right into Guardians of the Galaxy, which again, one of the outstanding movies of the bunch.
This is the other one that I will say it. This is the last one I say it to. It doesn't. Guardians of the Galaxy. It does not care if you have any knowledge on the comics. It doesn't care if you've watched the rest of the MCU, or if you'll watch.
It kind of expects you don't know who the fuck any of these people are.
Right. It's kind of a joke.
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy. I remember immediately in this movie. Like as soon as the classic rock kind of R&B stuff kicks in and he's dancing around on that planet, immediately I was like, I'm gonna love the shit out of this movie. I think this movie might be one of the best ones, and sure as hell it's one of the best MCU entries. It is very heavy on the comedy side, but it does the comedy really well. It doesn't try to use comedy to try and like skirt around things. It's just blatantly what happens when you put a bunch of sarcastic assholes in one room together and they have to do this one thing together.
Yeah.
Like
the comedy feels very different in this one, where a lot of the other movies tend to be, oh, this is a very serious situation that everybody agrees is very serious, but then
here's a one-liner.
Nobody's there's a one-liner, or this person is not taking it seriously, or something serious happens and it just kind of gets swept under the rug. This movie, I guess, feels different because everybody's treating it seriously, but also kind of coping through comedy, and like it's like a kind of a defense mechanism. So they're all pretty equally funny.
Oh yeah.
But and more funny in a different way. It's not like a quip or a one line or anything. It's more like
the comedy,
actual setups and jokes.
Yeah, the comedy feels like actual comedy. That's probably one of the brilliant things about Guardians is it doesn't matter what genre really is your favorite, because this movie hits most of them, and it does all of the ones that it does really well. So
for sure,
comedy being
totally
up there. This is the one that made everyone be like, I love James Gunn. You know, like, James Gunn.
We're like, maybe James Gunn should take over the universe.
Like, this is amazing. That first Guardians, a lot like Winter Soldier and a lot like Iron Man. It's just special. It's just a lot of fun. I remember showing it to my daughter when she was pretty young, and she took two things away from this movie. One, she thought Rocket kicking the chunk of grass out of anger was hilarious. She died of laughter at that. And two, she ended up showing off to her mom, look what I learned, and she did Star-Lord's like middle finger thing.
The crank.
Yeah, like of the 2 hours hilarious. That is Guardians, that was what you decided to pick up. The crazy thing is, I didn't even think she saw that part, but she did, and then reenacted that. And I was like, there's so many other parts you could have reenacted. Why did you choose that one? I thought it was funny. You don't even understand what that means. She was little. The Guardians is
it does stand out.
So much fun.
It stands out, and largely because Chris Pratt's so great in it.
Yeah. Like, he's another one of those. He fits that character just too well.
Yeah.
He is Star-Lord. I mean, he really is Peter Quill. So.
Yeah, 100%.
God, I love that movie.
It's so
whenever
fun.
I do the whole MCU, as soon as like Winter Soldier ends, I get very, very excited. So I'm like, going to space. Here we go.
Yeah. It's so good. Everything about it's so good, especially especially Bradley Cooper as Rocket Raccoon, like all of it. It's so fun.
It's a blast, and man,
Batista as Drax.
Is one of the funniest performances I think I've ever watched. He plays that character just so freaking good. Guardians also has a sequence that is just like, it's genuinely beautiful. in the middle of a lot of chaos, and that's when Groot is just like surrounding and covering up the Guardians to protect them, and everything lights up inside the little tree ball. There's just something like that shot, that whole sequence is so like, oh wow, this is a genuinely beautiful scene. And then he says the like, "We are Groot," and you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna cry because of a fucking tree. Luckily you get a dance off like 45 seconds later, but yeah, that first Guardians is it's special. It really is special.
Yeah. So it falls right before the second Avengers movie.
It does.
So we got another Avengers movie not long after the first one, honestly.
Yep.
Only 3 years. How do you feel about Avengers Age of Ultron?
I don't mind it. I'm constantly bothered that Ultron's mouth moves like a human, even though he's made of metal. That always throws me off really, really
He's
bad.
an artificial intelligence.
Yeah. I don't mind Age of Ultron. I do not think it's as well done as the first Avengers. It's not bad. It's vital to the rest of everything. I mean, without Age of Ultron, we really don't have any other MCU film. So I have to give it respect for that. The action's cool. It's fun. Age of Ultron is the one, though, where the little quips and the one-liners I felt were just overused. Just like, guys, you don't have to, like, you're fighting a whole city or a country of robots that are trying to kill everyone, and it's floating in the sky. We don't need jokes. We don't need, like, we just don't. I kind of wish they would have done a little more with Quicksilver.
Yeah. You mean before he dies?
Yeah, I feel like I'm one of the few that has never been affected by his death.
Yeah, it happens so
fast,
quickly. Or you could say it happens fast. Yes,
and you kind of do see it coming. By the way,
totally do. Yeah, and that may be why you don't feel the gravity of the situation. I mean, I don't even feel like it matters that much for Wanda. Like, for Scarlet Witch, she's not too terribly affected.
She doesn't seem to like. She is immediately, where she blows up a bunch of robots with her like pure emotion. Surge. But by the time they get into Civil War, she's kind of forgotten that she even had a brother. Which.
Yeah, it's like Quicksilver. Who?
Yeah. Who was he? I never had family. What are you talking about? I don't mind it. I think if it wasn't so important to the rest of the MCU, it'd probably be one I wouldn't watch near as much, or I would get up and do other things during. But because Age of Ultron pretty much directly tells you, or tries to prepare you for Endgame. It really does. I mean, it's blatantly tells you, like, hey, the Avengers are gonna get beat up. Like, you're going to see some bad things happen. You just don't know exactly what. And it all revolves around Tony, which is nice. But it's kind of funny going from the Winter Soldier to Age of Ultron. I know I made the joke earlier of like, maybe the Russo brothers should take over. I kind of feel like Age of Ultron was Joss Whedon trying to prove that he could still do it. But I can't help but wonder if the studio was already like, we got these other guys that they kind of,
they're doing all right.
They kind of look like they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and audiences are responding to it for sure.
How do you feel about Age of Ultron?
I agree with you. I think that it is very, very important. I love introducing Scarlet Witch, and I'm so glad that she's there. I love. I mean, obviously, you need the whole thing with Ultron, and you need to get to Vision, and you need all of that stuff. Um, but and I think it is made better by Civil War. Like there are parts I don't love the fights and the destruction and things like that. The fights between the robots feels very much like maybe even worse than the fights of the first Avengers movies against the aliens, where it's just there's not really any weight. It's just like these things that we're destroying because they're attacking us, but it doesn't really mean that much.
Yeah.
And so it's action for action's sake. I think Civil War, we'll get to it. It does like make it a little better. Like, oh, this has meaning and it affects people's lives when you destroy these whole cities and things like that. So that it does get made better retroactively for that reason, I think. But as a movie on its own, it's probably my least favorite Avengers movie.
Which I think is a very common opinion.
Probably. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised by that, for sure.
There's a couple parts in it that are very cringy to me. Ultron having lips, or at least the movement, it really does bother me. So I'm like,
yeah,
your metal doesn't move that. The rest of you operates like it should.
Yeah.
Why the fuck is your mouth moving like a human? Like, stop it. I also cringe heavily because it just feels so forced and anticlimactic. Scarlet Witch confronting a beat up Ultron who's crashed into the train. Or the bus, sorry.
Yeah.
And she tears out his robot heart. And it's even shaped like a robot heart. And she like crushes it. And he dies from his robot heart being crushed. No.
Yeah.
Every time that scene comes up, I'm like, two things. How close is that bus to where she was just at one scene earlier? Like,
yeah.
She doesn't travel that fast, guys. She's not her brother who died.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I always wonder that. And it just, I feel like they were told you gotta have at least one more dramatic part. Like, we have to have something dramatic there.
Give her something.
I don't know. The scene just feels forced.
Yeah.
I do, however, think the final Ultron bot with Vision is hilarious. Not because of the dialogue, but just because of the like, and beam. Like, all the Ultrons are gone. Bye-bye. Like, just without giving a shit.
Yeah. Look how powerful Vision is.
Right. Yeah. I do like Vision. And I think bringing Paul Bettany and making him, like, not just Jarvis, but giving him a full-fledged character, great. Yeah. I was very excited about that. His voice as Vision, the only person that should ever play Vision is Paul Bettany. Like, there's something with just his demeanor and that voice that, like, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you strike me as a non-human entity that is very powerful and can do crazy shit.
Yeah, he's great, and I love that he's in it. So I mostly love Age of Ultron for Vision and Scarlet Witch and what they become, especially. I like, to be fair, I do like the setup of Age of Ultron, where it's Tony Stark has these suits and this AI, and it kind of goes haywire, and now he is a liability to the team, and he has kind of setting up Civil War. He has this conflict within the team now, so it's important, and I do like parts of it for sure.
It's not that I don't enjoy it. I don't think it's as good as the others. I don't think it's a very strong contender just in the overall MCU. But Tony Stark's role is very interesting in it because he toes that line of like villain and hero, because he means well, but his execution of everything could be very villainy. It could very easily fall into the mad scientist kind of realm, which he kind of does.
He struggles very much with, I guess it's narcissism. It's the same thing Thanos has, which is, I will do what I know is right for everybody else. And he could certainly become that.
So it's so important to the MCU that I forgive a lot of the things I don't like about it pretty much out of the gate, just because I'm like, you have to watch Age of Ultron to understand the rest of the MCU. I think the only one that you don't have to worry too much about would be like Black Panther, and that takes place in a whole different country. So if you can accept, hey, this guy named Black Panther showed up, that's all you need. But then Age of Ultron, officially, finally, we get the confirmation that what we've been anticipating and kind of already know, but here's the, it's happening, is the end credit scene of Thanos opening up like kind of a doorway or whatever, and putting the gauntlet on and saying, fine, I'll do it myself. Which I remember watching it in the theater, and the whole theater just like fangasmed all over the place.
Crap their pants.
And then a whole lot of questions came up because we had seen the gauntlet in Odin's crypt area, and all of a sudden Thanos has it, so what the hell? Which part of me, I'm always like, I think this was a mistake, and then they like fixed it later on.
Don't they fix it later on? They're like, oh, Odin has some fake stuff.
They fix it in Ragnarok, where Hela's like, it's a fake. It's a very just quick, it's one of those like writer moments of, we need to explain this. How do we do it? Fake.
We were hinting at it, but we didn't know what we were hinting at yet. So let's undo it.
Not just have her call it fake. Have her actually like smack it off of the podium to show it means nothing. Don't focus on that, which all the fans focused on. But Ultron's important. I don't think it's as strong of a contender in the 22 films, though.
It's the post-credit scene is obviously reaffirming that we're building to Thanos and everything that happens there. It's kind of a reminder that, hey, remember Thanos that you saw in Avengers like 4 years ago or whatever? That's still happening. We're still going there. Don't worry.
Well, and I remember talking about the MCU up to the Ultron moment, up to Age of Ultron, with some friends, coworkers and stuff, and all of us kept bringing up like, okay, they confirmed Thanos, and I remember looking at everyone and just kind of having a unanimous like, that means things are going to get dark, because Thanos is not good news, and what Thanos does with that gauntlet is very bad news. And I remember all of us just kind of being like, is the MCU about to go super dark? Like, is it really gonna get heavy? Answer to that next week. It's a yes and no.
Yes and no. Very in Marvel's like. In Marvel tradition, yes and no.
But
and sadly we won't see the Thanos copter, which is something you should Google if you've never seen the Thanos copter.
I think he also has a car at one point in like the early 60s or 70s, whenever it was.
He can be very scary and very dorky. Honestly, all comic characters. They've been around for 50 years.
It's so funny to think about and looking at like old comic styles of some of these characters. Like old Thanos, not big. Not a big dude.
No.
Very easily like taken down. In fact, he's been killed by so many different, Marvel characters.
Killed by Squirrel Girl, if I believe I am accurate.
Squirrel Girl killed him at one point. No one knows how. The writers never said. I'm still kind of bummed that we'll never get a Deadpool like cameo with Thanos. That would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
But Deadpool is confirmed to cameo in Phase 4 at some point, so that should be interesting.
Yeah. That appears to be happening now that Disney has acquired 21st Century Fox, so that's good.
That'll be...
There's another Deadpool movie coming out, and it seems like they're keeping it R, so that's good.
Thank God.
Even though Disney owns it, so that's really good.
But
it would be terrible.
It would be odd.
Otherwise.
So that's Phase 1 and 2 of the MCU.
Yeah. Phase 1 and 2 except for Ant-Man.
Except for
We'll do Ant-Man next week, and then all of Phase 3 next week.
Yeah.
So if you haven't finished your Marvel binge, now's the time to do it.
Now's the time to crank down. How many more do you have?
I have the last 3. Which one of them I've never seen before. So there's one Marvel movie that I was like, you know what? Let's skip it. Let's find out
I'm
what
so
that is
curious
next time. It's Captain Marvel.
Oh.
I never watched Captain Marvel, and I didn't know if I needed to watch Captain Marvel, and then by the time I was going to get around to it, I didn't need to watch Captain Marvel because Endgame had come out. So, because it comes out like a month or 2 months later. So
yeah,
I didn't have a reason.
I'll say it again next week, but I remember watching Captain Marvel, thinking like, because they even marketed it, like you need to see Captain Marvel before you see Endgame. It's very important to Endgame. And then I saw Captain Marvel and was like, no. It's not important to Endgame. And then well, after I saw Endgame, I remember a few friends, and I were like, not to the movie, but to Captain Marvel. Like, but we had to watch it before seeing Endgame, and you don't at all.
Unless you're extremely thrown off by a new character showing up without a backstory, you don't need to.
But even then, you get a quick little like, oh yeah, she knew Nick Fury. Okay.
Yeah, she's here to help us out, and she's on our side, and that's all you really need to know.
So we're good.
Because as soon as she shows up, she fucks off again and does whatever.
Right.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves. That's the end of next week's discussion.
I'm just excited.
I am too. This has been a long time coming, and so I'm really glad. I like our discussion for the first half. I think it's gone well so far.
It's gone.
This is our first 2-part episode, so it's kind of we're checking in the middle of it.
Yeah.
How do you think it's going?
It's going about how I thought it would. I was like, I think Jake and I are going to share a lot of opinions because we generally share a lot of opinions.
That's why we decided to start a podcast.
I am kind of nervous about next week because my hot take opinions on a couple are next week, and I don't know how to word it without being in trouble. So,
are you going to be practicing it in front of the mirror? Are we going to get canceled?
We might.
It's about time. Honestly. I don't know. First of all, I don't know how we've gone a whole year. This is going to be our 53rd episode.
Right.
Do you realize this?
Yep.
And so we've gone a whole year not yet canceled. Might be because we don't have any listeners, but somebody will hear it eventually and cancel us. Yeah.
We have an audience, Jake. They're just...
We do. I talk to them. They sound like they have heard what I've said on the podcast.
I like seeing all of the emails about the random comments that we get.
Oh yeah,
those crack me up.
We do get spam comments on our website, movieboners.com, that I try to clean up occasionally. But if you ever need a link to some CBD oil or some shit, then or dick pills, they're out there.
We do get those. It's shouldn't be surprised, but
it's the internet after all.
So yeah, that's
all right.
Phase 1 and 2 minus Ant-Man.
Part one in the bag.
Man, the MCU just what an undertaking. And honestly,
Massive.
let's be honest, if we really, really dove into each film, this would have to be like a 10-part series just trying to talk through all of them.
Oh, yeah, at least.
Especially when the Russo brothers
crazy.
step in. The themes and shit that they start really diving into. I mean, their big hitters are the heaviest movies of the entire MCU.
Yeah, which I prefer.
Yeah.
I like the more complicated... It's going to sound douchey to say cerebral, but I like the more complicated intellectually, like comic books. Like, comic books have gotten so complicated, and this ties to this, and this ties to this, and they've done things to clean it up, but I think it's cool that movies are now becoming a universe that's connected, that's complicated, this is impacted by this, and it's cool.
Now they just need to be careful on the, like, melding of universes. We don't need Jurassic Park, Fast and Furious mixed with the MCU. We don't.
You think we don't need that?
Oh!
I need that.
Before we go,
yes,
I have an update for you. I did not see the new Fast and the Furious movie yet.
I was just going to ask you. Christy was like, we should see that. And I was like, yes, absolutely, 100% we should.
Yeah, I just didn't have time. At least yet. No, but I did watch a movie that you have been a big fan of for a while, and I finally got around to watching it. I watched The Last Witch Hunter.
You did. Do we need to do a separate YouTube episode for that, or do you want to tell me about it right now? How cool is that movie?
Oh my god. That movie is a mess, but
with the great Michael Caine.
It was entertaining.
Yes.
For the most part.
You don't have to tell me. I know.
There were so many moments I was like, was this made in like... This feels like it should have been made in the 90s. It feels like it should have been made back then.
That might explain why I like it so much, honestly.
It was funny. I think Elijah Wood is probably the most awkward actor in the whole movie. At no point did I think he fits this story. The whole movie I was like, why are you here?
At least you didn't say that about Vin Diesel.
No, I did
That's
not.
good.
I did not. I do still feel bad for Vin, though. I'm like, dude, you need to get away from action. You need to go and do other genres. Just for your own sake, because you can't rely on the Fast and the Furious or action movies your whole career. You already look tired. So,
yeah.
But I did watch it, and I was like, this movie's ridiculous, but it's entertaining, so...
Yeah. Good. I'm glad that you watched it. I'm glad that you didn't hate it.
I did not hate it.
I think it's
there
a fun
are far
movie.
worse movies than that out there.
100%.
So yeah, that's it. Thank you, everybody. Comment, let us know your favorites. If you liked Iron Man 3...
Please tell me why.
You can try to defend it.
Same with
Thor.
Same with Thor: The Dark World. Who is out there liking Thor: The Dark World? I would like to know.
And I would
that.
like
so
to
find
know
us
why.
On Facebook and Instagram, and let us know why.
Let us know which one out of
Movie
Phase 1 and Phase 2 is your favorite. Obviously, I think you and I both agreed Winter Soldier is ours.
Yeah, I would say Winter Soldier number 1, Iron Man 1 number 2, probably.
Yeah. Out of Phase 1 and 2. We need to... We should probably do that next week, is have, like, here's our top.
Oh, we could do that.
Yeah, like, which ones we felt were the strongest.
We did... I mean, our whole James Bond episode was the top 10. We could do a brief top 10, maybe 5 of Marvel.
I think we could do 5. We'll do top 5.
At least 5.
So,
Sounds
let
good.
us know what you think. And all that good stuff, and let us know what you're hoping to hear us say next week, because next week brings on some big things.
Potentially, not potentially, certainly the biggest movies of all time.
Yep.
We'll talk about those next week.
Yes, sir. All right, thank you, everybody.
All right. See you later.